Well, thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Rena Sargentopoulos. Let's get right to your headlines. You're going to want to keep your eyes locked right here on KARE 11 Plus all afternoon for weather impact alert coverage. Our weather team is tracking a system that could bring several inches of wet, heavy snow to the metro. That's going to happen tonight. It will impact your evening commute and your drive tomorrow morning. Jamie's going to have much more coming up in just a few minutes. In other news, though, a look from the Capitol Hill this afternoon where President Trump is preparing to address the joint session of Congress. It will be a highlight reel of the actions that he has taken in his first few weeks of office. He's also expected to lay out his vision for the next 4 years. It comes as the U.S. imposes new tariffs on trade partners, Mexico, Canada, and China, to try to stop the flow of illegal immigration and, of course, drug trafficking. Alice Barr has the latest now from Washington.
Hi there. President Trump is preparing to address a joint session of Congress tonight with a full slate of issues facing the American people. The theme for the speech, according to an administration official, the renewal of the American dream. The president is expected to focus heavily on immigration and his administration's efforts to slash the federal government, with Elon Musk set to be in the audience, along with fired federal workers, invited by Democratic lawmakers, they say, in an effort to draw attention to people who've been harmed by the Trump administration's policies so far. President Trump also expected to highlight new tariffs on top trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China, that he sees as a means to strengthen American manufacturing, but that he has acknowledged could bring some short-term pain with rising prices. For instance, the price of a new car expected to jump by as much as $12,000. You'll notice increases at the grocery store, too, especially on produce imported from Mexico. On the foreign policy front, the president may address a new move to pause military aid to Ukraine following that Oval Office clash between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. The White House saying the aid is being reviewed to ensure it's contributing to the administration's goal of being focused on peace. Critics warn the move will only embolden Russian leader Vladimir Putin and leave Ukraine seriously vulnerable. President Trump ready to defend his America First strategy and tout what he sees as big wins in the White House so far. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Our trade partners are already reacting to the tariffs, with Canada this afternoon announcing a 25% levy on $30 billion Canadian worth of U.S. imports. That is effective immediately. Canadian officials say another $125 billion Canadian on U.S. goods will take effect in a few weeks. Canada also imposing a 25% tax on electricity that it exports, to 1.5 million homes in Minnesota, Michigan, and New York. Ontario's Premier Doug Ford says the province's energy producers will cut off exports to the U.S. altogether if more tariffs from the U.S. are put in place on April 2nd. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says none of the countries involved stand to benefit from this, while Vice President J.D. Vance says Canada has the power to stop the tariffs.
They've chosen to sabotage their own agenda that was supposed to usher in a new golden age for the United States. And they've chosen to undermine the incredible work we've done together to tackle the scourge that is fentanyl.
The president's going to have conversations with the Canadians. We need to see real engagement on the fentanyl issue, on the drug issue. That is fundamentally the underlying element of these tariffs, is we think the Canadians have not been serious about stopping the drug trade. Now,
China and Mexico also firing back, Beijing placing tariffs up to 15% on a variety of U.S. farm exports. Mexican officials say tariffs on U.S. goods in that country will be announced Sunday. It's not clear exactly when you will notice any difference. However, higher prices on most things you buy, like fresh fruit, vegetables, and gas, are surely coming soon. And just this afternoon, Governor Walz speaking with farmers in Cannon Falls, saying these tariffs will do more harm than good for America's farmers.
For those who think we're going to win this and Canada's going to give in, that's a very simplistic way of looking about this, because the one thing that's going to happen if this thing goes on for any amount of time, the trading partners are going to look for other partners. They're going to look elsewhere. And we know we lost markets for our soybeans to China the last time we did this. They went to Brazil. They went to Argentina. They'll go somewhere else. And we have to be trusted trading partners, because folks are working too hard out here.
Developing right now, Target reporting lower sales in February and telling investors it only expects sales to grow around 1% this year. The company attributing it to, quote, ongoing consumer uncertainty and uncertainty surrounding the tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. Of course, Target joins Walmart in calling for a rocky year on the sales side of things. The Minnesota-based retailer also facing backlash from shoppers after pulling back DEI efforts, including a boycott of the store by some since January. But if you pay an Xcel Energy bill, you could start seeing lower prices as soon as your next due date. Right now, Xcel Energy is proposing $318 million in refunds for Minnesota customers. Now, most of that money is coming from brand new federal tax credits for the energy that it generates from its nuclear plants. The state still has to approve the refund, though it's unclear today if or when that might happen. If it does, Xcel officials say the average customer will get $81 back, and it would be spread out over bills running through March of next year. Well, now we're hearing from Minnesota organizations directly impacted by the federal cuts to USAID. It comes less than a week after the Trump administration gutted the agency that provides things like vaccines and life-saving medications and emergency health care to millions of people globally. Our Carla Halt looks into what happens now.
As a director for the Center for Victims of Torture,
in locations of large-scale humanitarian displacement,
Neil Porter knows pain.
Often experience multiple traumatic events.
Just as he also knows how his team here in Minnesota and around the world have found a way to help.
Our work is life-saving.
But today,
it has been devastating.
Neil has glimpsed the kind of hurt that comes with cuts to CVT's mission.
It's been a real privilege to work here because of the quality of the work and the outcomes of the work.
The CVT staff cut by 75%. The budget of $38 million slashed at least in half.
We have received notification that those grants are now terminated.
And the organization is hardly alone.
The last 5 weeks have been really difficult.
Nicholas Hayen with the Minnesota International NGO Network says the nearly 100 international development organizations based in Minnesota are still reeling from the decision to cancel $60 billion in foreign grants. 90% of USAID's work.
A lot of them are facing significant layoffs. Some of them are potentially even going to be shut down entirely.
And while the humanitarian sector struggles with what they call the potential loss of life,
there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, who depend upon food aid. It makes America safe because problems abroad can become problems at home.
Neil says he understands the Trump administration wants to reduce waste, but he says the CVT mission actually helps alleviate the pain of extra treatment and the cost that comes with it.
So what we do not only is the right thing to do, but it also is the least expensive thing to do.
Pope Francis, the 88-year-old leader of the Catholic Church, spending the day resting after another setback in his battle with double pneumonia. The Vatican says he suffered 2 acute respiratory failures when mucus in his lungs made it harder to breathe on Monday. NBC's Ann Thompson has more from Rome.
This morning, Pope Francis no longer needs that non-invasive breathing machine after suffering 2 attacks of acute respiratory failure where you rapidly lose your ability to breathe. That is caused by a buildup of mucus in the lungs that often people who suffer from pneumonia face. And as you'll remember, Pope Francis is dealing with double pneumonia. Doctors perform bronchoscopies after each incident. That is where they take a tube that has a camera on it, put it in the airways to clean out the mucus. A Vatican source says the Pope has no new infection, nor does he have a fever. And we are told that he slept well overnight. Now, he remained alert and conscious through both of those procedures, but he will not be participating in tomorrow's Ash Wednesday services. He's just not well enough to do that. Today, his prognosis remains guarded. I'm Ann Thompson at the Vatican. Now back to you.